A special thank you to you, Lebo, for hosting this masterclass. Take note, Lebo is our vice president. And this morning, Lebo will be the one to introduce our guest speaker for today. And before I go, I should also be able to sincerely thank the technical team for making this session possible and ensuring that we connect and learn seamlessly across different countries and regions. Thank you to everybody who has joined the session today. Once again, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, for those inspiring and encouraging remarks. We really appreciate that. And for actually your continued leadership in advancing women's participation and influence within Africa's technology landscape. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Now, to begin the core of our masterclass, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest speaker joining us from Zimbabwe, Faith Musonza. Good morning. To get us started, Faith is a digital economy, AI, and enterprise transformation strategist with over 18 years of experience across Africa, the Middle East, and global markets. She currently serves as Southern Africa consulting partner for the International Data Center Authority (IDCA) and group head of strategy at Assurity Financial Services. Her expertise spans digital transformation, fintech innovation, AI strategy, financial inclusion, smart cities, digital infrastructure, and technology driven economic development. Throughout her career, she has advised governments, regulators, and institutions on enterprise innovation and digital economy strategies while contributing to large scale transformation programs across multiple industries. She is also an international speaker, an entrepreneur, and a board member with qualifications that include two MBAs and executive qualifications in AI and big data. I have not done her justice in this introduction. Please check her out on LinkedIn because my short summary does not do justice to the scope of her expertise. And today she will guide us through practical insights on building confidence in professional communication, creating meaningful networks, navigating opportunities within the tech industry, and positioning ourselves for growth and leadership in the digital era. With her experience and expertise, she's exceptional. We are truly honored to have you with us today. It is morning on my side. Pardon me if I do announce morning. I know for some it is day or afternoon or evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in warmly welcoming Faith Musonza to the Women in TICON Africa Masterclass. Faith, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Levo. And I also want to say a special thanks to Elizabeth as well. It's a great honor to be able to participate and to be able to contribute to the women in TICON Africa. The topic that we're discussing today is quite very interesting because it seems as though we do communicate on a daily basis. When I in my earlier days, when I began my career, it was quite interesting when I sat in one of the board sessions I was invited to. And one of our directors, operations directors, he had a very great idea that he wanted to table. And unfortunately, because he failed to fully articulate himself, the idea was not adopted. And there was a great idea that just went out and thrown out of the window. So with that, I then learned that it is very important for us to be able to communicate effectively. So there is the power of effective communication and networking in the technology sector has become very important. And today I'm happy to say that we are also celebrating technical brilliance from here in Africa, from M-Pesa revolution in Kenya to the fintech explosion in Lagos and the AI research coming out of Accra and Kigali. But we really talk, sometimes we really talk about the skill that determines whether that brilliance actually reaches the world. And this brilliance basically lies in the power of communication. So today we're going to explore how intentional communication and strategic networking can unlock economic growth, drive innovation, and position Africa technologists as global leaders. And because of that, there's a concept that we played when we were young called a broken telephone. It seemed, one person stands in front, and then you pass on a message to the person who's beside you, and then the same message is then passed on to the people that are also within the same line. And unfortunately, while we were very young, what would then end up happening is that the last person who receives the message, it's usually a bit distorted. And I want to bring in that same concept as well today within the tech space, where we've got a developer, where you've developed a great innovative technology. And now the biggest ask within the room is, how then do you communicate that innovation to the next person? And in most cases, as a developer, you also have to talk to your project manager. You have to relay the information, describe the technology, the impact. And usually it's quite easy in terms of understanding one another when we are talking about the power of APIs, the modules that have been built into the system. And it's a language and jargon that, that we do understand from a similar level. But then the challenge comes when the project manager now has to take that project and probably has to present the idea to the finance officer. And in most cases, the finance officer is no longer conversant in terms of the tech jargon that you would be talking about, but the finance person would be looking at it from a finance perspective to say, okay, the tech team wants to talk about increasing their budget. And if you don't have a full buy-in of the finance personnel, how then are we also going to present the same project to the management and also to the board in terms of adoption? So by the time that that same project then reaches the end users for implementation, then it also has to transcend across the continent. In most cases, you see that the original vision, it's almost unrecognizable. I have seen this firsthand in banks across Southern Africa. And though the vision was correct, the technology was sound, the strategy was right, but the communication, it broke down along the way. And when communication breaks down, projects stall, budgets, they overrun, and trust literally does evaporate. And this is amplified, especially when we also want to go global. You realize that multilingual environments, cross-cultural teams spanning different countries, and the challenge of communicating, it compounds the barriers of effective communication. Therefore, the challenge then is, how then do we ensure that there is no broken telephone, especially when we are communicating not only within the tech space, but when we have to transcend and then move into other spheres of influence in terms of communication as well. So interestingly, you realize that there is a huge communication gap within the African tech space. It is identified that about 67% of African executives, they struggle to communicate their vision to stakeholders effectively. And when that happens, that would also impede in terms of adoption and implementation of the vision and the objectives that we want to share. And then also interestingly, you realize that about 1 trillion US dollars in terms of mobile money transactions were processed across Africa in 2024 and built. This was built around an element of trust and effective communication, from the technology itself that facilitated the movement of money to the end users as well, who would understand the purpose of the technology, that would enable them to be able to transact, that would enable them to be able to make purchases, and that would enable them to process transactions across different platforms. And then you realize as well that 53% of global money users are in Africa, which is the world's largest mobile payments ecosystem. So when people do not understand the technology, there is a breakdown in terms of communication. So how then do we ensure that this technology and innovations that we're coming up with are easily understood? So we also need to ensure that the tech personnel, they are also capacitated to ensure that they effectively communicate the technologies, the innovations, and the world would be able to accept and be able to use these technologies in order for us to become very effective.
Just your previous slide, you mentioned that the best communicated solution often wins, and you gave the story about the executive that presented their story. They failed to deliver because of communication. But now, for women in tech positions, how can they position themselves strategically to become the voice rather than the technical support functions? This is where a struggle is with many of our executives who are technical. They fail to progress because of the lack of voice. How can you advise there?
So thank you very much for the question level. We are actually coming to that. And it's not only amongst women, but I've also seen that across the board as well, where you are used to, because most of the tech partners that I've worked with, they usually work from home, or you're usually within the back office, and it's quite easy when we talk amongst ourselves, amongst our peers, tech to tech, it's familiar jargon. And the challenge now comes when you have to then switch from having a technical conversation and you have to converse the same message to a non-technical person who is outside the purview of your technical jargon. So what I found out is that communication is basically you're delivering information. You're passing on information from one person to the other. But how then do you communicate complex matters, complex issues, and you simplify the language in a manner that you can be able to be understood? So in most cases, how I was able to overcome that challenge, I had to start practicing, operating in different environments. And I came to understand that there's different communication for different stakeholders. You've got, obviously, I spoke about, our tech peers. You've got communication with regulators. You have to explain the compliance side and ethical side, or governance structures for the innovations that you're talking about in a compliance environment, where the regulator would say that your technology is safe, it can be trusted, and therefore it can be approved to be shared to the open market. And then you also then, for example, you've got M-Pesa. They've got a mobile platform. To the end user, I'm thinking, my mother who is in the rural areas, when she sees the M-Pesa platform, to her, she's saying, "Hey, Mama, I want a platform that will just enable me to send money at ease, securely, in the comfort of my home." So communication has to be centered around different contexts. It has to be centered around the audience that you're communicating with, in order for the communication or the information that you are transmitting to be effectively delivered. So it's not only information delivery, but it has to be understood, it has to be trusted, and it also has to enable people to be able to apply it. What do I mean? I may build a technology platform. For example, M-Pesa built a mobile payment platform, right? That technology on its own, if it doesn't have end users, it's almost useless. So therefore, what then had to happen, there is some communication which had to, it was then communicated to say, this M-Pesa platform How is it good for people? What is the impact? What is the solution? What is the problem that it is trying to solve? Number one, it's always been a challenge in terms of sending money. My grandmother had to travel miles away for her to be able to access the bank or to access the postal services for her to be able to withdraw money. And then when she takes the money, she has to board another bus, travel another kilometers, a couple of miles away for her to be able to then transact. So it is very important that whatever information is being delivered, it has to be understood. What is the purpose of its use? And secondly, there also has to be a trust element as well. So now to tell my grandmother, you don't have to travel anymore. But however, M-Pesa has built a solution where you can put your money into the wallet for your safety, for you to be able to monitor the platform and for you to be able to transact on it. And you can transact with multiple people in the comfort of your home. So that advantage it then becomes easily understood to say, oh, okay, fine, this is the comfort. So communication becomes effective when it is applied in the different context, and it has to ensure that the message is intended for its right users as well. So one of the questions that I would want to ask is, what communication challenges do you see most often in technology environments today? Obviously, you can't respond to me at the present moment, but anyway, I've just identified a couple of some of the challenges that some of my tech peers did identify. So I'm just going to name just a few. Initially, we did talk about, as tech people, we usually work within the back office, and within our mindset is there's no need for us to be able to go out to communicate with people. So you find that most technology professionals, they still view themselves as just the support, because we are just the back office teams. So rather than, putting in a strategic contributions, we are quite comfortable within the tech corner, and we are not yet ready to be able to transition into operations, and then also transition into more other strategic roles that will enable us to be able to communicate our vision, to communicate the technologies, innovations that we've come up with in a more effective manner. And then the other gaps that we do find is the fear of missing out as well, and just the fear of speaking out, because it's quite, the tech space is usually very small. When I'm talking to my peers, is much more easier. But now when you have to move outside that circle of influence that you're used to, you have to learn new jargon, you have to learn new words that you have to add on to your own vocabulary. And the question is, will people understand me? And how effective will I be? Will I be able to collaborate with, not only people within the tech space, but can I effectively be able to collaborate with other people within the ecosystem as well? From your marketing team, you've got your business development, you've got your mergers and acquisitions, you've got your finance team as well. So it is also very important that people usually shy away, and because they haven't had that much exposure, there is that low cross-sector collaboration, which then becomes a challenge. And then also communication around digital transformation. So technology teams, they often focus on implementation, while leadership, it usually focuses on organizational impact. You've got also, they focus on the return on investment as well, return on equity. You're also talking about social impact in terms of the technology that we also want to deploy. And then there's also overuse of the technical jargon as well, where many technology professionals, they communicate for technical accuracy instead of audience understanding. As I said earlier on, it's quite easy to talk about the APIs. It's quite easy to talk about, language modeling. And then when you have to transition now to a compliance environment, or to an operational environment, or where you have to reposition in terms of the brand into the market, the conversation and the language, it also has to differ. So there's different communication, there's different language for different stakeholders and different environments as well that has to be applied. And then we also do realize that there's usually a gap between, technical experts and decision makers. So translating technical complexities into business and policy understanding, that usually comes in as some of the challenges. So in many organizations, engineers, they do speak architecture, and then executives, they talk about outcomes, and then while policymakers, they focus on governance issues. So when those languages are not fully aligned, you see that projects actually stall because there is not full understanding in terms of the communication. And then that ends up slowing the innovation. And at the end of the day, adoption of these innovation and new technologies that are being deployed, it also does suffer within the process as well. So it's quite important that for academics, professionals as well, that instead of remaining within your sphere of comfort, your sphere of influence, it's also very important to start interacting with other circles outside the tech environment as well, which will help you to be able to adapt, number one, which will be able to learn and understand how the world operates and how you can be able to communicate effectively within other environments as well. So practice is always very important. And then the other challenge as well that I did talk about is fear. And fear, it holds us back. It is not productive to us. Rather, what it does is it keeps us in a little corner. So once we're able to overcome fear, communication becomes much more easier as well. So I've got two different scenarios that I just wanted to share with you. So the first scenario just explains how sometimes we are so comfortable with the technical jargon that it's easily understood amongst our peers. For example, if I'm going to walk into a room that has investors, that has policymakers, that has got customers included as well, and I say, we are leveraging AI-driven multi-cloud infrastructure orchestration for scalable interoperability across our ecosystem touchpoints. To my tech counterparts, it's quite easy for us to understand what is being built, what is being delivered. For example, you've got Western Union. They have built a beast of a payments infrastructure which allows remittances across multiple jurisdictions. And using this lingua, it's quite easy for technical people to understand that this is a beast of a technology system. And then in another scenario, same application, and one comes to say we cut operational costs by 40% using AI-powered cloud automation. And then three of Africa's largest banks in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa, they rely on our platform today. Number one, that language has already changed from this first scenario that I did share with you, in the sense that, number one, it reveals the cost it reveals the cost implication. Number two, it shows the impact and the scale in terms of the breadth where our technology system has reached and also is currently being used as well. So in our communication, it's very important that it becomes adoption driven, in the sense that people are able to put it into different break it down into different sets of adoption, from cost, from usability, from adoption as well. And as I said earlier on, communication, if it's going to be effective, it has to be delivered, it has to be understood, it has to be applicable, it has to be applied in different scenarios as well.
Mind if I interrupt you, Faith? You just touched on an icky point there, because what I find interesting is how innovation sometimes is stifled because of this one factor that you just indicated from the previous slide. How to phrase a sentence in informing a non-technical person. The two are quite uh, one is speaking to a technical person, the other is speaking to your executive at the finance and also at marketing. How is it a failure on academia or personal development or a lack of practice? This is something that I find a challenge, especially when you ask innovators or developers or even your tech guys, tell me what your problem is. What is the solution? What are you doing? And they fail to deliver that because they cannot interpret in a way that the next person can understand. Where are we failing in this one?
Um, okay, so that's a great question, Levo. So I would begin to say that great technologies, they build systems, and great leaders, they build understanding. So when we are communicating to be understood. And when we usually look at our curriculum, especially here in Africa, a lot of it, there's lack of practice in terms of how the technical part that we are being taught within the academic space can be applied in the real life environment, in the sense that how then do you communicate these technical skills into an operational environment where even my grandmother in the raw areas can be able to understand. So I think we now need to move into an environment or to a scenario whereby we build up a module that is more practical, within different environments. And I'm going to give an example. You remember Flutterwave. When they pitched to their investors, they did not lead with payment gateway architecture. What they said was, we want to make Africa feel like one country for payments. So, what Flutterwave simply did within their pitch, they simplified the vision that they had built and what its purpose was going to be. So sometimes I think our communication needs to go back to simplicity. Although I'm going to touch a bit more on it, and I'll also share a bit more strategies in terms of how then can we effectively communicate the ideas and the technologies that have also been developed as well. And when we were looking at, when I was thinking about Flutterwave. So when they said we want to make Africa feel like one country for payments, so that single sentence simply unlocked hundreds of millions in funding because it communicates a vision that investors could see, feel, and believe in. And the challenge that we're seeing today is most technical projects, they describe it in the technical way, in a way that our grandmother sometimes will then fail to be able to appreciate and understand what is being said. So I want this to sink in for a moment. So when I said that, great technologies, they build systems, and great leaders, they build understanding. So Africa does not have a shortage of great technologists. We have some of the most creative, resourceful, and resilient engineers and innovators in the world. What we need more are technology leaders who can translate that technical brilliance into understanding for the different stakeholders that I did mention earlier on, from your boards, for investors, regulators, for your customers, and for the communities that we serve. And think about the leaders who have shaped Africa's tech landscape. For example, Strive Masiwa did not just build Econet, he communicated a vision of connectivity that inspired an entire continent. And then we've got Juliet, a human. She did not just run Google in West Africa. She built bridges between, global technology and local African realities. And then we move on to Fred Swaneker. He just doesn't run universities. He communicates a vision of 3 million ethical leaders transforming Africa. So these leaders, what I want to believe is that they understood that technology is the foundation, but communication then becomes the multiplier. So without communication, your impact stays, it stays local. And with it, your impact goes, you know. So what they understood is that our technologies, the solutions that we're developing, for it to be impactful, it's not only for the local usage, but you know, it also has to transcend across borders as well. So when you ask yourself, as a tech expert, are you building systems or are you building understanding? And I believe that as tech leaders, we definitely need to ensure that we do have both capabilities. So the question that we ask is, you know, why is communication really, really important? Is we want to be understood. We want to make sure that the information that we're sharing can be applied and we can also see the impact thereof. And one of the things that I've seen over the years is that we have to become intentional and strategic in terms of how we communicate in order for us to be able to influence change, in order for us to see the impact of the communication that we're also sharing. So being intentional becomes very, very important to every, tech expert, to every woman who's within technology. And, I developed a little framework called Impact. You want to be a tech woman of impact. What do I mean by that? The I simply means for, stands for identity and intent. Understand, who are you? Faith, I'm a digital economy strategist, right? Architect, if I may put it that way. And what do I want people to know? I want them to know my capabilities and how I can be able to build or support whatever challenges that they may have, or how I can improve their livelihoods as well. And, within the business space, they always say it's always very important to build a 60-second pitch. And that 60-second pitch, what it simply does is you're identifying yourself. When you walk into a room with people who don't know you, the first thing they want to do is they want to understand, who are you? So you have to be very intentional about introducing yourself in order for them to determine within those 60 seconds, do they want to have further communication with you, or they just want to end the conversation immediately. You need to understand who your audience are. And within a room with various audiences, as I spoke about the different stakeholders, if you're going to approach a regulator, you need to ensure that your communication is designed in a way that the regulator, it can speak to the regulator. If you're going to be approaching customers, your communication needs to be simple and usable as well for them to easily accept and be able to apply that information. You also need to understand there's different communication for different communication channels as well. Face-to-face is also different from virtual sessions as well. When you call someone sometimes over the phone, it's sometimes very difficult for them to be able to pick up your non-verbal cues. Whereas when you're having a communication, when you're communicating with someone face-to-face, it's quite easy for you to pick up on the cues and for you to then restructure your communication. And then also action and deliver. You have to start off, at least identify, sometimes it's quite very difficult if you're someone who's very shy or introvert and walking into a room with so many people. Who do you communicate with immediately? So sometimes it's very easy to just identify one person, approach them, and then introduce yourself. And then it builds up on the communication so that when you're afraid, it takes away that fear as well. And it also helps to build up in terms of your confidence. And then need to calibrate and adapt to the different environments. You need to be able to have, emotional intelligence to be able to understand, test the temperatures within the room, test the energy of the people that you're communicating with, and then you adjust as well within real time, and then you can be able to simplify or modify, your communication styles, and without losing yourself in the process, and without also losing your own intelligence, and also losing interest of the parties that you're communicating with. And thereof, it's also very important to be able to track and then measure the communication that you have shared. How impactful is it? The messages that you have shared, is it how well has it been received? What are the results thereof? For example, we spoke about M-Pesa. When they took their product into the market, the results, how did they measure? They measured their impact by the number of people who are adopting their technology system. So a technology system is worthless if it's just good for just being developed, but it cannot be deployed. And there are no people who can actually use that same technology. So we have to be very intentional, as I said, about our communication, and that way it can position us for strategic influence as well.
I do have some inputs from Beauty Garaba. She says, true to maximize its impact and visibility, it should be supported and driven through board representation. I believe that she's talking about being intentional with our communication. And then Maria is saying another challenge is when it comes to abstract concepts, for example, having to explain invisible infrastructure changes like database migration or refactoring to non-technical teams. It makes updates feel vague or low value. And this is one challenge I know many tech people have. And I have another one from Elizabeth as well. One challenge I've observed is in the industry is the tendency for IT departments to report under finance. This one I take to heart through CFOs. While financial oversight is important, technology is now a strategic business enabler that goes beyond budgets and cost control. This structure can sometimes make it difficult for technical priorities, innovation, and digital transformation initiatives to receive the strategic attention they require. In addition, communicating complex technical concepts to non-technical decision makers is often challenging, as technical teams must continuously simplify and translate technology risks, opportunities, and business value into language that aligns with business objectives. So this is all about being strategic in our communication. I believe this just summarizes what you just said in the previous slides.
In short, we need to simplify our communication. Use simple words when you're communicating outside the tech space, and you're also speaking with non-technical people. There has to be clarity. And like what they said is, how do you explain a vague idea? It's quite complex to people who can barely understand or appreciate what you're talking about. I think the conviction has to, start with self. If you have a strong belief in your ideas and the innovations that we're coming up with, the second thing would be simplify it in a manner that can easily be understood by my grandmother who's far away within the rural areas. And when we have simplified communication, and then also we have to be context aware. If you are talking, outside the tech space, and you've got other operational departments that you're communicating with, have the ability to be able to understand the temperatures within the room, have the ability to be able to understand their level of communication and appreciation of technology, in order for them to be able to understand, in order for them to be able to be able to apply the communication that you're also sharing. And also composure and stability. Sometimes as tech people, we are always very reactionary. When challenges happen, you're trying to communicate, this has just happened, and how then do we solve the challenges? Always remain calm and be composed. Be clear, be conscious in order for you to be easily understood. And above all, be intentional, as I said, in the manner that you're going to communicate with. Be aware of the different communication channels that are available to you and be cognizant. Map up a strategic stakeholder, develop a stakeholder map where you can develop different communications for the different audiences that you do have. And I find that for me personally, it has helped me to be very intentional and strategic in terms of how I'm then going to communicate the plans, the ideas, and the propositions that I do have to, whether it's the board, whether it's the CFO. If I want him to release a budget for me, it's very important for me to ensure that I speak to their pain points. So when you speak to their pain points, it becomes very easy for them to be able to release funds and ensure that the tech team is fully funded for us to be able to continue with our innovations as well. So be intentional. Number one, also plan when you're going to communicate with you, build up your pitch, and from there, it then becomes easier when you approach people and you communicate with them as well.
Thank you very much. My take, be intentional, plan and build your pitch. But I have this one big issue, Faith. You know, technology and the digital era, it has taken one big chunk of our communication. I mean, most of us depend on copy and paste. And I know that from uh, offices, ChatGPT is the assist that gives almost your letters to your policies. Now, because of that, it's killing the speaking development. Our interpersonal skills are not being developed. Um, our brain cognitive growth is going down because of that. And because of the AI dependency, we are killing the critical thinking component that should be developed, and we're already lacking in it as we are speaking. How can we balance this? Because without it, we would struggle. It gives us ideas to work with. How do we balance this without compromising our brain development? Because communication is key. Like you said, it builds most of our systems. We are building understanding instead of just a system. If it's there and it's not understood, it will fail. How do we balance this? Or how do you balance it?
This is the reality that we're living with today, and it's quite scary when you think about it, especially in today's era. But what I would say is we need to allow, these technologies. If we allow these technologies to atrophy the communication and critical thinking skills, we are going to produce a generation of technically incapable people, who are strategically useless professionals. So it's very important that, AI and any other technology or innovations that are going to come up in the future, we use them as complementary for it to be able to enhance our quality of work. But however, strategic thinking and our ability to communicate with one another, relationships should not be replaced within the process. So we need to build technologies and inspire adoption. So the technology is not the enemy. However, passive dependency on it becomes an enemy. So we need to use technology in a way that it does not take away our ability to communicate with one another. It doesn't take away our cognitive ability. And I was looking at one of the challenges that is coming up today. We've got dementia and Alzheimer's, and there is a sudden rise with dementia and Alzheimer cases, all because one of the causes is lack of use of the brain. So the moment we stop allowing our brains to function, learn new things, and apply those things that we have learned, we will lead into cognitive decline, which can also then result into dementia, Alzheimer's, and many other cognitive challenges in the future. So technology should not be used as the sole implementation, but we should use it as complementary. And secondly, it should not take away our ability to be able to read the thing. For example, you generate a report in 20 seconds. And guess what? Sometimes ChatGTP, cloud, and all these other solutions, they are not accurate. There's a lot of hallucinations. So our cognitive ability, I think this is the time where we need to ensure that we continue to build up on it and enhance our own capabilities as well.
You just reminded me that we need a lot of digital literacy around all this technology so that our people are prepared to understand what it is that they are adopting. And one of it is killing our own communication. I mean, we can't even talk to our kids now, let alone leading them to become our future leaders or leading companies and countries. That is going to be a disaster. Faith, I want to thank you very much. That was very practical and empowering. You have shared valuable perspectives on communication, confidence, networking, and professional growth. It's not just about going to school, but also practice and planning is part of our professional development. And I'm hoping that many participants have gained actionable lessons that they can immediately apply in their careers and businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not time. I had hoped that we would get some questions. There is a summary, somebody indicating what you just summarized, Faith. In the absence of all questions and inputs, I want to thank everybody for making time today. Indeed, we've learned a lot, and I believe that our take home today is to find something that we can help improve ourselves in communication. And maybe in the next upcoming TICON Africa conference in Zambia, Livingston, you can come and have conversations with those that actually do practice and showcase their skills and abilities in the tech system on how they deliver, that they can be recognized and also um, be heard and make an impact. I want to believe that this is a call to the end of our masterclass today. And I would like to sincerely thank everyone who joined us from different countries across Africa and beyond. Today's discussion indeed reminded us that communication is a leadership tool. Networking creates opportunities, and visibility matters in the tech industry, whether you're a student, whether you are an executive. And it should be authentic to create professional relationships. It is essential for our career growth and innovation. Faith, thank you once again. We look forward for more conversations with you. I really learned a lot. You have contributed richly to this session, and we appreciate your time and commitment to empowering women and professionals in technology across Africa. For those that wish to know more about TICON Africa, please ticonafrica.org for conference details that I mentioned for Zambia, Livingston, from the 23rd to the 25th September 2026. My final announcement, please, we are happy to have you and we look forward to more interactions with you for the next master classes, and this will be communicated to you soon. As we end this session, please stay connected, continue learning, continue networking, and continue transforming Africa through technology. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Let's watch the video. The TICON Africa Awards that are still open now until the 26th June 2026.
I hope that the award will inspire everyone to be faithful to African technology.
This is the best, greatest conference in the world. Tonight is obviously about recognizing talent.